Well, I suppose we're going to open up this episode with this horrifying social media post.
I just want everyone to know that there's official Alligator Alcatraz merch. There it is, provided to us by the state of Florida. Incredible. And yeah, would you rock this drip? Look at that.
No, I would not rock that drip. In fact, that was fascist dork Benny Johnson, whose entire purpose in life is to dorkify fascism and make it seem less scary. At the Alligator Alcatraz, a migrant detention center in the Florida Everglades, that was constructed in less than a week to house in a completely for-profit grift up to 5,000 migrants. And yes, they are hawking merch. The Florida GOP's official Twitter, seen here, oh my God, posted this yesterday, quote, "Feds approve Alligator Alcatraz, Florida's gator-guarded prison for illegal aliens. Surrounded by swamps and pythons, it is a one-way ticket to regret. Grab our merch to support tough on crime borders. Limited supply. Get yours before the gators do." Holy fuck nuts. So for when I say for-profit grift, I totally mean it. Every aspect of this. Last night, Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Because of the violence and criminality I've seen due to open border policy of sleepy Joe Biden, in particular, allowing millions of people into our country who shouldn't be there, I wanted someone representative to show how we can fight back." And then it happened. I saw a picture of Alcatraz looking so foreboding. I saw a picture of Alcatraz looking so foreboding, and I said, we're going to look into renovating and rebuilding the famous Alcatraz prison, all caps, sitting high on the bay, surrounded by sharks. What a symbol it is and will be, unquote. Conceptual work started 6 months ago, and various prison development firms are looking at doing it with us. Still very early, but a lot of promise. So, surrounded by sharks, surrounded by alligators, outsourcing the violence they want to do themselves to the local fauna, like blood sport in the Colosseum, Christians to the lions and all that, and how the turns have tabled. Christo-fascism has been reincarnated from the 1930s, and now they're the ones doing the tossing. Anyways, hello and welcome to Colonial Outcasts, the anti-imperialist podcast that connects the police and carceral state to the war state and demonstrates how colonial forms of violence and repression used overseas always come home to roost. We talk about a lot of cheery subjects around here, and our main goal is to get people to care about foreign policy because state violence, whether it's enacted with a bomb in Palestine or a big, beautiful bill at home, is all connected by the same system, capitalism. At any rate, I am your host, Greg Stoker. We're joined by co-host Mark Wayne, and for the first time, Jack Jones, immigrant and naturalized U.S. citizen, U.S. Army veteran who was in the Missouri National Guard. He's now a through hiker, long-distance hiker, and an anti-war activist and commentator, and I've really been loving your reporting and analysis on the ICE raid insanity on social media, which I'll link in the description. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm honored to be here. Like I was saying earlier, I don't feel qualified at all, but that's where we're at, where you just have to have normal people reporting the news because the news won't do it. So this is where we're at.
Yeah. And so you're coming to us from Berlin, Germany. And before we started recording, you were talking about the anti-fascist graffiti.
Yeah, it's amazing. Instead of I grew up in Missouri, and in Missouri, it's Trump flags everywhere, Confederate flags, all these hate flags. And out here, you get signs that say ACAB, ACAB graffiti, and it's, Nazis Toten, and just all these anti-Nazi, anti-fascist graffiti. And it feels just so nice to be surrounded by that kind of messaging instead of, hateful messaging.
Right. And that kind of contrasts with what I've seen from the German police within the context of suppressing pro-Palestine, quote unquote, political dissent. They look like the Nazis. So is the graffiti indicative of the political climate within Germany? Because it seems like a lot of people are really pro-state violence.
Yeah, so Eastern Germany, especially, it's just apparently full of fascists now. I was just at a meditation retreat with this monk, incredible Austrian monk. He's ran 298 of these 10-day retreats now. And he was saying how he used to go out, there's like a community of he called them forest people, like people living off the grid in the forest. And he's like, yeah, I used to go out and hang out with them between the retreats, but now they've all just become super, super fascist, and I can't even go hang out with these dudes anymore. But, you know, like apparently it's kind of the same in the US. You know, the rural areas are becoming super right leaning, you know, super fascist. But Berlin itself is like a pretty big mecca for progressive, you know, left leaning, you know, pretty hardcore anti-fascist ideology. And it's, yeah, that's nice. But I mean, what, like the recent election, AfD had 20 something percent. That's the Germany's far right party. And because thankfully they have a different government system, they weren't able to, but that was close to, you know, the Trump share in the US. And like, if they had a different system, AfD could have seized power. And you know, it's just the people I talk to here, everyone is very concerned. They have this feeling that Germany is 5 to 10 years behind the US. And yeah, the Berlin police are known for being absolutely brutal. Like I was at a protest, like one of the, super 50, 60, 70,000 people here in Berlin. And the cops put someone in a head hold and choked him until he lost consciousness and had a seizure. And you know, they're just super, super violent, and they target people. They target specific people. I mean, everywhere, you know, but like they're well known for targeting leaders, targeting, you know, they have their targets. They know who they're going after. Every squad, so they ran in these little squads of 10 to 12 men. Every squad had a little dude with a camera, and you know what that camera was for, right? They were picking out their targets, you know.
Right. No, and they're running facial recognition software through the phone. So if someone's in the database, they'll get a phone notification as they do dragnet surveillance, biometric surveillance of the crowd. So yes, and you know, all our fascist police forces, whether it's the guys in Germany or ICE goon squads in the United States, they all learn from each other and share the same tactics, techniques, and procedures. So yeah, when you say Germany's like 5 to 10 years behind the United States, yeah, it's because governments learn from each other. So anyways, all right, everyone, because real quick, we are forced to exist in end stage capitalism hellscape. We are on Patreon. If you're picking up what we're putting down, where you get some free content and some exclusive content on Patreon. Again, if you join as a free member, you'll also get notified whenever we drop an episode. So that's cool. Also, if you have Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We need 1,000 of them to get shunted into a better algorithm. So if you can head over there and help us out, we'd appreciate it. If not, and you don't want to do that, we're just glad you're here. Plug over. Oh yeah, and wait, Mark has merch. It's not my department. I have no idea what he's doing over there with the merch, but I'll link it in the description.
Yeah, by popular demand, everybody's been asking for some type of Colonial Outcast merch. So there's some badass anti-fascist designs you might like, and we are looking to expand our operations at Colonial Outcasts. We want to try to hire some people and actually be a professional platform. So, any little bit helps for us to get to that goal. We want to actually somewhat be a professional journalistic entity at some point. So,
hey, we're doing all right.
Oh, sure, Greg, you're doing great.
Yeah,
we're all
okay.
Doing great. Hey, you're a big boy.
Yeah, I'm a big boy now. So, in big boy news, there are a couple of bulletins that I wanted to talk about for the next 30 seconds, just so we can cover them. Trump says Israel has accepted the terms of the U.S.-backed Gaza ceasefire deal, and now the onus is on Hamas. Been there before a dozen times. The promise of a ceasefire deal is to give Israel political cover as it aspires to its messianic vision of a greater Israel. No ceasefire will happen at this time. And even if it does, Israel broke the last ceasefire in January 250 times at least. Anyways, so putting that friggin' political theater to the side. Also, the U.S. brokered peace deal between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda is actually wild. The U.S. is getting access to $2 trillion worth of DRC minerals in exchange for forcing the withdrawal of Rwandan-backed M23 militias, which we support. That's 1/10 of the DRC's total mineral wealth, more than any single foreign country claims. Classic trick of destabilizing a region for resource extraction. Going to do an episode on that next week. But today we are going to be talking about ICE, which will, over the course of probably a few more years, transition into the role of the secret police force of the regime. Alligator Alcatraz, a for-profit concentration camp that will eventually be used on HGVEs, homegrown violence extremists, aka socialists, aka people on the anti-authoritarian right, and Trump's big, beautiful bill, which will be the single largest upward redistribution of wealth in history. It also expands the powers of the president in a way that is reminiscent of the Enabling Act of 1933, officially titled The Law to Remedy the Distress of People and Nation, which is a crucial piece of legislation in Nazi Germany that allowed the government to enact laws, including constitutional amendments, without the involvement of the Reichstag or German parliament. And it's seen as one of the fundamental steps in the transition from the Weimar Republic to Nazi dictatorship. So that's fun. We'll get into that as well. And before we jump in and start the discussion, I would like to begin by framing this with a short video by friend of the show, Davidson Boswell, who absolutely nailed it yesterday in this summation of what's going on.
Final stage of class antagonism is the big, beautiful bill. We are now going to have a society that is completely oriented towards the billionaire class. And the way that we're going to deal with it now, the way that the ruling class has decided to do it, is create a federal police force. ICE is going to get $75 billion in funding, and rural hospital systems are going to begin to collapse. So the social contract has been ripped up and thrown into the fire. People, especially people who voted for Trump, are going to watch their family members die, and they're going to want recourse for this. And I guess the ruling class is betting on deputizing a lot of people, bringing them off the sidelines, giving them union benefits if they join police forces, if they join prison systems, and just repressing us beyond belief. Because there is no alternative to revolution if you have robbed people of an ability to get a job, right? AI is going to destroy the workforce. And then you've also robbed them of their ability to live their life with dignity, because if they get sick, they die now. So what is the alternative beyond people essentially rebelling in the streets? The only way to quell that is to have ICE agents wearing masks, standing at the ready to protect the ruling class's capital. So yeah, we've entered the final stage of class antagonism. And I guess we'll see how the working class is going to respond to this. But I expect there will be a furious backlash.
I might have to disagree with Davidson on that last point. I'm not really sure. I think we're just going to go quietly into that good night.
It all depends on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that same thought. I thought for all these months now, I thought for sure this is the red line. Kidnapping people off the streets, red line. Sending people to El Salvador, red line. Red line. No. Just gonna let it happen.
Yeah.
Well, watching a genocide live stream for a year, I think maybe it just desensitized everybody. We're just like, oh, what can you do?
Well, and it's like, what are laws anymore? We thought that disregarding our own self-imposed international laws abroad would impact domestic policy decision making at home. It's crazy.
Well, another thing that's been used to kind of give us this pacifying attitude is the racial divisions that they have stoked between us. So, and it's between everybody, white people, black people, Hispanics. There's been a very concerted effort on social media to astroturf racial division and race baiting between each other. So when, and I've seen these astroturfed, obviously paid influencers, like from different backgrounds, throwing shade on the other racial group to say, hey, why should we care? We can't get involved. It's not us. They didn't stand up for us during this period, and vice versa. So we're seeing that stoked online, and it's very much concerted. It's very much astroturfed by these tech companies. They're paying people, which is why you're seeing all these really cringy, like pro-war propaganda videos from like Gen Zers. This isn't like organic. This is paid propaganda. So the goal here is to create so many divisions so that when one group is being oppressed by the police state, the rest of us stand back and watch and be like, oh, well, it's not my group. So, and fuck that group over there because they didn't stand up for me. We're seeing that accelerated to a level I've never seen before on social media, especially like obviously Twitter.
Yeah, we're in the end run right now. So, Jack, I just kind of wanted to ask you. You're living in Germany as an expat right now. You're a naturalized U.S. citizen. Are you concerned that that could no longer be a thing in the future?
Yes, yes, yes. And 3 months ago, I was posting and writing about how I am making plans to lose my citizenship because I expected that was be one of the things that would come down the line, because of course they would weaponize denaturalization and use citizenship as a weapon, because every other tyrannical regime does the same thing, right? And Trump was doing it in his first term. And, they're so on about immigrants and immigration. Like, of course, they're going to use that as a weapon. And I think, that's something that maybe won't resonate for people that aren't affected. But what it means to be denaturalized, like for me, is I become stateless. That means my passport is invalid. That means all of my documents are invalid. Like you cannot travel when you're stateless. And I'm thinking about, like the army veteran who was, or his father, I forget, his father was a veteran, right? And he was born on a base in Germany, but his parents at the time weren't US citizens, right? And so he is like stateless. He doesn't really have citizenship anywhere because he didn't have US citizenship. They didn't give that to him. And now they deported him to one of these third countries. And it's like, and we were saying, okay, now he's deported, but like, think about that. Like you just go to a different country where you have no citizenship, you have no visa, you have no status, you have none of your documents. Like, what are you supposed to do? And that is what would be faced by like 25 million Americans, which if they denaturalized you, now many of them would be stateless. And then what are they doing to stateless people? Is they're sending them to the third countries, because if you're stateless, you don't have a country of origin that will accept you to be denaturalized. And like, what is that except for a death sentence? And that is what I am actively planning for right now, because of course, in the course of fascism and authoritarianism, they try to silence all voices of dissent. And like, I'm like a trifecta for these guys. Like, I'm an immigrant, I'm Chinese, so I'm a communist paid Chinese spy, and I'm a dissident. So like, of course they're gonna do something, and I'm just expecting it. I'm waiting for it. I'm making plans, and it's it's stressful. It's scary to think about what happens one day when all of your documents are invalid.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they're really relishing this, and I'd like to bring it back. This is all like a for-profit thing. It's a scam. Not only was the detention center in Alligator Alcatraz. Let's start just calling it, because they're selling merch off it, using it as like a kitschy like Disney World ride, like Escape from Alligator Alcatraz. We just start calling it Alligator Auschwitz. So they used FEMA funds to construct a FEMA camp and then turn it into a detention center. And it's already not doing so well. Like, it rained last night and we're seeing this. Florida, Alligator Alcatraz is costing taxpayers $450 million per year to operate, with a per detainee cost of approximately $245 per day, and it's already flooding. Awesome. So I guess next rainstorm or next hurricane, like, everybody can just in there can die. Also, I think it's telling that there are people still unhoused and displaced from the last round of hurricanes in Florida. But no, we can use FEMA funds for this. I think they should really just highlight where the government's priorities are now for everybody going through. And one thing that we want to bring up is that this is, again, all about forced labor, government subsidies, private prison contracts. And when Trump and DeSantis and Kristi Noem, Ice Barbie, visited Alligator Alcatraz yesterday, this is what they said about raiding farms and using workers.
Finding some way to get farm workforce and service sector workforce. And I think you've discussed somehow a program of people leaving on a sponsorship and coming right back. Can you give us a little more detail about that and why, in the view of some hardliners, it's not amnesty?
Take care of our farmers and hotel workers and various other people, and we're working on it right now, and Ron's going to be involved, and you're involved already. So we have a lot of cases where ICE will go into a farm, and these are guys working there for 10, 15 years, no problem. The farmers know them. We're going to put, it's called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility.
Owner responsibility. Uh-oh.
Where they're going to be largely responsible for these people. And they know these people. They've worked on the farms for 15 years, and all of a sudden so I have a great, Ron does, Christy does, we have a great feeling for the farmer and for others in the same position. And we're going to give them responsibility for people. And we're going to have a system of signing them up so they don't have to go. They can be here legally. They can pay taxes and everything else. They're not getting citizenship, but they get other things. And the farmers need them to do the work.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
so hold on real quick.
Okay.
Jesus. So what this appears to be leading up to is something similar to like what happened in Blair Mountain, where you had, because when he talks about farmers, do you really think he's referring to small farmers, or do you think he's referring to corporate farms? Because I'm pretty sure he's referring to these corporate farms, and the way this is starting to shape up and sound like, back in the day, they used to have corporate villages where you worked for basically slave wages, and you lived in corporate housing. You bought from corporate stores. You essentially lived in a big corporate prison camp, but it wasn't technically a prison camp. It's just that they owned everything. And if you try to unionize, they send in the cops to beat the shit out of you, or the Ku Klux Klan. I believe the Klan was part of that police force back then. So that's what I see shaping up. They're going to try to normalize the idea that we're going to get back to corporate villages where we all live on this plantation, and we have to buy everything corporate, essentially just like a dystopian 2025 version of what we saw at Blair Mountain before the revolt happened. So I think that's the subtext of what he's saying, is that this is not small farmers he's looking out for. This is big agri he's talking about.
Yeah.
You know,
well, you know, I'm happy for Jack. If he becomes stateless, he can always apply to become a indentured wage slave on a big agro plantation.
How did you know that was my plan, Greg? And I've got, one more piece to add. You don't even have to go back that far to get an example. So there's a Vice documentary everyone should Google after this called Trump in Dubai. I think it's Vice Season 4, made on HBO. It came out in 2016. And this documentary, it goes and it explores these workers that were building Trump's golf course in Dubai. What happened? They're foreign workers, a lot of them for Pakistan. They show up. First thing the bosses do, they take their documents. They take their passport. They take all their documents. Now they're put in these dorms. It's like 15, 20 people to a room, like awful, disgusting bathroom, not even a sink in there. They're held in horrific conditions, yet they are charged every day, room and board, on this. And they are charged more than they make. They're charged more than they make. So they're being held hostage. They can't leave. Their documents are being held hostage. And now they're racking up debt for every single day that they have the privilege of building this golf course. And of course, Trump has plausible deniability. He says, well, I didn't do this. These are Dubai contractors that I hired. I didn't have anything to do with this. But, I think that's where he got his idea from, because now they are sending out invoices. DHS is sending out invoices to migrants. We saw that reported in April, where migrants would be charged up to $1,000 per day, if they're in the country illegally. They're sending out these invoices now, real invoices. The one I saw was $3,000 invoice. So what are they going to do? Is they're going to charge all these, migrants, and they have, it's on the Federal Register, and I'm forgetting the name, but Google around enough. It's on the Federal Register. It was posted. It's effective June 27th. So this is live. This is happening. And they charge them in there. You can read it. They charge them 5% interest. And then we know Geo Group, Core Civic, these places, they pay their, prisoners, detainees $1 a day. So it's going to be this perpetual debt slavery where they've got to pay off the debt to our society. They've taken so much from our society, so they've got to pay it back. And that's what's going to
And the way they're going to sell it to Americans to get them to get a public buy-in is that, well, look, we're finally getting them to pay back their dues to our, like they're going to frame it so that they're paying it back to us Americans. So they're going to try to invoke some type of stake in the game that we all have. Like, oh, finally, all these immigrants who have been on welfare, even though they're not on welfare, and even though they're paying tons, like, was it 90 billion in taxes a year? They're gonna frame it so that this is a good thing for America. And this is what we have to learn about Trump. Whenever Trump says the America or the American people, when it comes to our interest, he's referring to big corporate interest. That's what he's referring to. So if you just flip those two terms in your mind, everything he says will make sense about what he's talking about. But it's a little sleight of hand he does when he's speaking to the public to try and manufacture consent for everything.
Yeah. And so I think we should go through the big, beautiful bill, because for me, this is very much like new regime, martial law, soft launch. Okay. And we can talk about the deputization of National Guardsmen to be like immigration lawyers and stuff. But Trump's big, beautiful bill earmarks some $170 billion for immigration and border enforcement related funding provisions. This is final stage of class antagonism. All that remains is to build a federal secret police force and a for-profit detention center carceral system under the guise of immigration enforcement. This bill includes, and we're going to go point by point so you can see what they're really doing here, $45 billion for building new immigration detention centers, including family detention facilities. This represents a 265% annual budget increase to ICE's current detention budget. It is a 62% larger budget than the entire federal prison system and could result in daily detention of at least 100,000 non-citizens. Almost $30 billion towards ICE's enforcement and deportation operations, increasing ICE's annual budget threefold. Alongside this increased spending in immigration enforcement, between 12 to 17 million people are at risk of losing their health care through Medicaid cuts. A new $10 billion fund to reimburse DHS, Department of Homeland Security, for costs related to safeguarding the borders of the United States to protect against the illegal entry of persons or contraband. This funding is nearly 50% of Custom and Border Patrol's fiscal year 2024 budget. However, unlike a normal budget, this is my favorite one, it's a slush fund. This funding would provide very few guardrails and little guidance to how DHS must use the funds. As a result, this would become, again, a slush fund for Customs and Border Patrol to largely use however it's determined. And this is my favorite part, it caps the number of immigration judges to 800. Despite record backlogs in the immigration court system. So it's expanding detentions, it's expanding detention facilities, but capping judges that could process these things. So longer processing times just sitting in a labor camp.
That is the plan, right? That is the plan. But hey, Greg, I was in the National Guard. They can deputize me as a judge, and I will oversee these cases. I am very well qualified to do that. I was an E5 in the National Guard, so deputize me.
All right, Sergeant, start getting him out of here.
Hey, do you think us E4 Mafia guys will be able to get that type of power? Do you think we're ready for it?
The specialist mob.
The specialist mob.
Okay, so there's a lot to break down here. Because we know that ICE was about a couple months away from going completely bankrupt. They're already like $1 million over budget, and they applied for a request for more funding to get them to September. Then the big beautiful bill passes. And a couple comments on the big beautiful bill. It's not beautiful, but it is big. And the reason it's so big and it was passed under these insane artificial time constraints is so that people couldn't read or didn't have time to process all the provisions inside the bill. So it's kind of like a shock and awe, bureaucratic move, and it looks like it's going to pass the House. And I guess Democrats, their big way of fighting back, and this is why we use the ruling class, not like Democrats and Republicans, because this is how they fight back. Chuck Schumer posted, I just forced Republicans to delete their ridiculous bill name. It is no longer named One Big Beautiful Bill. Nothing about this bill is beautiful. It's a betrayal to American families and is undeserving of such a stupid name. Thanks, Democrats. Good job, guys.
They changed the name, guys. It's all good. Now we'll just.
I can't, dude.
That's gonna give me so much comfort when I'm laying in one of these camps starving to death. That's gonna give me so much comfort.
Don't worry. Hey, Jack, don't worry. Just got to wait 3.5 more years and we'll be able to vote again.
Yeah.
No, it's so amazing how the ratchet effect has led up to all of this. And I constantly drive this point home. If you guys think that this is a Republican thing, you are wrong. The Democrats and Republicans worked together in tandem over the course of at least 20 years to build on top of each other. Like Obama and Biden, they expanded ICE. They did the 1994 crime bill back in the 90s. All of this culminated into what we're seeing now. So I keep telling people the Democrats helped build the throne that Trump now sits on. So and the reason why this is important to lay this out is because the danger that we are currently in right now as a population is that we are very emotionally and psychologically vulnerable right now. We're in shock. And this is where the Democrats will slip in and try to act as the alternative messiah to save us from this. And they're already grooming Gavin Newsom as like the alternative to Trump, the charismatic dude who's going to be there to fight Trump against this. He's not. If he wanted to stop what ICE is doing in California, he could have easily. He could have easily stopped it. So same with Mayor Bass. So just throwing it out there, you have to drive this point home to your liberal and Democrat friends. There's no voting our way out of this. So, yeah.
What do you guys think is left?
Well, hang on. Before we get there, I just wanted to, because that's definitely the next point. I just wanted to highlight this point that Mark just made. Listen, migrant bodies are commodified under our economic system. So this is a bipartisan issue. In 2005, a couple years after ICE was founded, 25% of immigration detention occurred in for-profit detention centers. And this increased to 62% in 2014 under the Obama administration. In January 2020, 81% of ICE detentions occurred in private prison facilities. That was a Trump policy. And in July 2023, the number was increased to 90% of all immigration detentions being for profit. So this is a cross administration thing. This is just policy that, Obama was called the deporter in chief. Biden had record deportation numbers. Like the Democrats just use more decorum about it. Now, are they as aggressive in their like white nationalism? Absolutely not. But again, they don't exist to defeat Republicans. They exist to block progressive action from access to political power. So anyways, the Democrats are doing an excellent friggin' job at that. With regards to where do we think this is going? Well, ICE's purview keeps moving. It keeps expanding. They keep moving the goalposts. First we're going after like only the worst of the worst, the most violent criminals. Now they're going to job sites. Now they're talking about going to farms. And eventually you have to ask yourself, we are living in times that we thought existed in history books. I am concerned, and it seems blazingly obvious that ICE is eventually going to transition to a paramilitary force on behalf of the state. How do you guys feel about that statement?
I mean, they're already wearing more expensive equipment than us National Guard guys, right, Jack? Hey, Jack, did you have those fancy nods that they're wearing right now? I didn't get those.
Those quad nods are $50,000 each. 50,000, and they're wearing them. They're always wearing them in the day. Like, what are you guys doing?
So it's like all the incel LARPers that you see like spending their paychecks on all the most expensive equipment. Now is their time to like live their dreams online and playing Call of Duty.
So just for the audience, why this is so stupid is because during daytime operations, you don't wear night vision for a couple of reasons. A, they're fucking clumsy. It wears out your neck. They can break. Also, they get caught on shit, like clearing through a compound. You get your nod stuck on a freaking clothesline, and then you're fucked. It's just stupid. So you take them off and you put them in an equipment pouch, and then when the sun goes down, you put them back. They're a lot of what they're doing. The militarization of ICE is kind of like a marketing strategy too for the kind of people that it attracts. Like these guys will never like sign up to serve in the military and fight in a war, but they want the cool gear, they want to look cool, and they want access to steady paychecks. They're getting paid very well to be class traders, and yeah, they basically want to live with kind of like a Hollywood lifestyle with zero accountability. And that's kind of what we're seeing.
Now, here's the sorry, go ahead, Jack. My bad.
Oh yeah, I would say on that point, I've been keeping track of these videos pretty closely, and if you notice in some of these ICE raids, they have cameramen, they have professional cameramen following these masked up ICE agents, and then you go over to the DHS, Border Patrol, their Twitter pages, they post like these professionally edited propaganda videos that I am sure a teenage boy watching, like, oh, that looks really cool. I want to do that. Look at all that cool gear. And they're getting to like, it speaks to the most power hungry, the most despotic type of person. They see that and they see, hey, I'm going to get paid to look cool and look tough and oppress, brown people. Like it, just like you're saying, like the absolute worst type of people. And just watching these videos, what comes to mind is this looks like live fire training to me. Like these look like training scenarios to me. And it's like, what are they training for? They're training for the day when they're going to do this for real against American citizens who are armed, And that's my read on it.
Yeah. And the fact that the personality types involved that ICE is like crowdsourcing to, and I'm not trying to be an optimist, but here's some of the good news. These types of dudes, these types of dorks, they don't handle heat very well. They like if and I'm not advocating for anything here, whatever. But I'm saying that when the heat does turn up from the public, like you said, we have to remind the public we have 2 billion firearms in this country, probably $13 trillion, 13 trillion rounds. Americans are heavily armed. And we're pissed off, and we're broke, and we're dealing with psychological and drug issues. So it's when shit does pop off, these guys will be the first to run. They will not be able to handle the heat. They're thinking now they feel empowered because the public has to just kind of stand back and watch. But when that day comes, when shit does pop off, they will be the first to run, which to me is somewhat of a silver lining. It's something that we have to keep in the back of our minds. These guys aren't scary. They're not the scary types. They are not hardened. They're not battle-hardened combat professionals. Because you're battle-hardened combat professionals, there's a certain type of wisdom that comes with being in combat that you come back with, and you have a more realistic view of the world, and you have regrets, and you have more of a moral compass, it seems like. At least that's my experience in talking with combat veterans. They've changed their perception on life. So it's something to keep in mind for the public so that you do not get entrenched in fear and dread and gloom. Understand that these men are weak. They only feel strong when they have their little buddies around and they know that they're covered by the state. So keep that in mind.
Mark, on that, that silver lining, I was thinking about that today. I was like, man, if this were Russia or China and there were these masked armed men going around, people would not be filming them. People would not be confronting them. People would not be yelling and blocking them in. People would be terrified because those populations, that's how I came to all this. I grew up in China. My father was in prison during Tiananmen Square, after Tiananmen Square, because he spoke out against the slaughter of civilians. And then he was thrown in prison for 2 years without due process, just in prison. And that was the whole saga of how I was given up for adoption and came to the US at 8. And I remember in that time, how scared people were. And like, I repeated something I heard my father say, and my mom was like petrified, like covering my mouth, like just in case the neighbor heard it, because the fear is that if the neighbor heard it, they'll turn you in, even if a 2-year-old said that. And now your family, gets a knock from the secret police. But like Americans, weirdly enough, we don't have that conditioning. Like we're so ignorant of history, we don't even know to be afraid of the secret police, right? like people are like so American exceptionalism is so strong that people don't even the secret police are out on the streets and people don't even know to be scared of them. But that is like a silver lining. Like, it's not spreading terror. It's just getting people pissed off. And I think this is such a odd, because we have never seen a population that is so heavily armed with the mythos of, our entire national myth is throwing off of tyranny and rising, freedom, give me liberty,
Yes.
or give me death, and like, how, I don't know how authoritarianism, fascism plays out in a society like that.
No, exactly. We are kind of in uncharted territory historically, because there is no precedent for this in a country that's heavily armed, that's used to freedoms. I mean, we are spoiled rotten with freedoms, and when we get the slightest of our freedoms taken away, we put up a fuss, right? So how does that play out? Now, I do want to highlight, because here's the thing that I want to change about Colonial Outcasts. I'm going to say it right now. I feel somewhat guilty that the way we've run our show for the past year and a half has been just strictly analysis. And I feel like sometimes we play into the hands of the ruling class by instilling some type of dread. And going forward, I want to at least dedicate a big chunk of each episode to some type of strategy, some type of hope, some type of call to action that is actually effective, because I do not want to play into their hands of calling dread. Now, something very interesting happened in Bell, California. Are you guys aware of it?
The fire department drove out ICE and stuff.
Yeah. So Bell, California is one of my favorite towns. I have deep roots there with friends. A lot of them are Chicanos, Cholo gangs, and I'm good friends with the groups down there, let's just say. And Bell, California really set an awesome precedent. It's small. It's not that significant, but it is something that we could blow up and use it as a model for what happened. I got somewhat of a video here. I'm going to play it real quick.
ICE and city of Bell.
So they're surrounded.
Yeah.
ICE has been violent towards peaceful protesters. Peaceful are not welcomed in our neighborhood. KID napping people is an act of violence.
So, okay, so I'll explain what happened. So ICE came, I believe this was June 20th. They came to pick up somebody. And it just so happened that as they were picking somebody up, that's when the schools were getting out. Because I spoke to my friend who lives in Bell, who knows about the entire situation. What happened was a tow truck driver was stalking ICE. And as soon as ICE parked and got out of the car, he jacked the car and he started towing it away. And at the same time, the schools got out and they surrounded ICE. And then the fire department got involved. And then, believe it or not, the Bell police got involved and stood with the people as it happened.
Wow.
While the Huntington Park police, they were on the side of ICE. Really interesting situations. You had two police departments opposing each other. And then you had ICE in the middle. ICE was driven out of town, and the fire department blocked off the roads too to protect the people. This is what community resistance looks like. This is one of the best examples we've seen, where all sectors came together. Now, the reason why Bell, why was Bell the one to do that? Well, Bell has a history of siding with the oppressed. If you don't know, the mayor of Bell, he is actually pro-Palestinian, and he made an official declaration that the city of Bell stands with Palestine and called for a ceasefire. So it goes to show that people in the pro-Palestinian movement, especially in the official sectors, they tend to be on the side of the people when it comes to ICE. Now, I'm not trying to overblow the situation, but I am saying that it is a model that was done, and we're seeing more of these happen. And if we can just increase the inclination for that in people across the country, we stand a better chance. And it's not hard. Like the ICE, we drove them out, and we're talking about a fire department and a tow truck. Imagine what would happen if entire crowds who are looking really gnarly and willing to do something would do to ICE agents. These ICE agents are not brave. They're extremely skittish. They're extremely worried about their body. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great tie-in, because I follow the Department of Homeland Security on social media, and all their posts every day are bitching about how ICE officers don't feel safe. This was from yesterday. This was from yesterday. Department of Homeland Security writes, make no mistake, sanctuary city politicians like Hakeem Jeffries, Mayor Wu of Boston, Governor Tim Walz, and Mayor Bass of Los Angeles are contributing to the surge in assaults of our ICE officers through their repeated vilification and demonization of ICE. This type of fear-mongering demonizes our law enforcement, who are now facing a nearly 700% increase in assaults against them. That seems like a made-up number. I'd like to see data, but yes, DHS is saying assaults on ICE now up nearly 700% over the same time last year. And then
those are rookie numbers. Let's jack that up.
Yeah, they're freaking rookie numbers. And then again, look, 20 hours ago. Their entire page is now 17 hours ago. Our brave ICE law enforcement officers are now facing a nearly 700% increase in assaults again. Yeah, they're like literally that's all they post about.
I just want to say something about Mayor Bass. No, Mayor Bass is not anti-ICE. She has completely enabled ICE in the city of Los Angeles. And you know what's crazy? Even liberals and Democrats are aware of that now in California, which I never thought was possible to wake up a liberal, but apparently it's happening in California. Liberals are saying, yeah, why is Mayor Bass doing this? So this narrative that Mayor Bass is somehow anti-cop or anti-establishment, anti-ICE, it's completely false. So don't buy into that narrative. And so is Gavin Newsom. He's completely on board with it too. He could easily stop what's going on in California.
Yeah, and of course, Hakeem Jeffries doesn't give a shit. Tim Walz called in the Natty Guard during the George Floyd uprising. So they're just playing both sides of the fence to keep people more and more divided, like blaming the Dems on this. But when the Dems generally, especially the elite, long-standing establishment, is in complete support of all this. But ICE officers, yes. Here's another strategy. We want police abolition. I'm just going to speak in general terms. Has always been a weak point for the left because they're not really going to get defunded ever. So it's like, what can you really do beyond like acts of like resistance that will get you arrested? Well, there's an alternative again, because these men, heavy air quotes, if you're just listening to the audio version of the podcast, these guys are scared. They're cowards. And so here is a great grassroots thing that you can get down with and hopefully create, if you're tech savvy, within your own city. And I think it's a great idea.
Launched what might be the most controversial facial recognition website online. It lets people upload photos of LAPD officers and using public records returns their name, badge number, and salary. The site's gotten over 50,000 visitors in just a few days. Here's a basic idea. Facial recognition runs locally on your device. No images are saved. The tech matches faces to a dataset the city of LA had to release after a public records request. The creator says this is a response to officers covering their badges during protests. He also built a similar tool in 2018 for identifying ICE agents. The LAPD hasn't issued a public response, but tensions over facial recognition are already rising. This raises a bigger question. When public officials use tech to surveil people, should that tech ever be turned back on them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely it should. This is where the overlap happens, right? This topic of surveillance, state surveillance. This is a talking point that we can bring people on the right if they're so inclined, if they're truly going to stick to their libertarian roots and freedom roots and constitutional roots. Yeah, he's shaking his head. No, there's some out there, Greg. I swear I've met them and I brought them on board. Trust me. So is Josephine. There are right wingers out there who are starting to become very worried about the surveillance state apparatus being turned against us. Because if you remember, during the Obama administration, there was a lot of paranoia that Obama was going to turn us into a police state through martial law. He rebranded the whole police state thing, and now they're cheering it on. But there are people on the right who are coming over, and that's happening. And this is something that you have to harp on. Do you want to live in a surveillance state? Because it's not for your safety. It's for corporate control over your lives, for multinational corporations. So if you hone in on that point with right wingers, you can bring a few on board onto our side. I guarantee you can. I've done it. I've done it multiple times. So throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I was just scoffing at like the whole like libertarian thing. Like, what frauds did like most of the founders of that whole movement end up being?
Oh, I know. Oh God, I hate the party. It's They had Peter Thiel give a speech.
What?
They had Peter Thiel give a speech at a libertarian conference. Make that make sense.
Yeah, I actually, I'm lost for words that they. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not.
was like,
It makes sense. They're full of shit. They're just a bunch of full of hot air. They're impotent. They have no teeth whatsoever.
no,
But,
well, I think I don't want to derail the whole episode by going on a rant on libertarianism and how they function.
No, let's
You
talk
know,
to Jack. Let's talk to Jack. I want to pick his brain some more, man. I came on here to talk to Jack.
I'll just
All
shut
right.
the fuck up then.
Jack, this is the $1 trillion question, man. And this is what I've been looking forward to this opportunity to talk to you about. You mentioned in one of your videos that we have got to stop putting ourselves in a state of fear and paralysis over what's happening. And we need to start organizing and doing local community. You were National Guard. It's finally good to have a fellow National Guardsman on this instead of feeling like the only nasty girl on the panel for once. But what do you suggest? Because you are a leader. I've been watching your videos. I'm a huge fan of you, man. I love the strength that you endow to the audience who watches it and the hope that you give. You said this too will pass. As a definitely an adventurer, somebody who's gone through some very tough terrain in excruciating conditions, what advice do you have to give to the public who might be in that state of paralysis, and give them some perspective on the fact that this is not as bad as it's being kind of ginned up to be? Because a lot of this is fear mongering. A lot of this is also to keep us in a state of fear.
Yeah, lots of thoughts. I think the first one, like these goon squads with their quad tube nods, there's like 2 squads of them. Like they get a lot of press, but there's like 24 of those people in total.
Yeah, it's the ICE tactical squad, which is basically the ICE photo op squad.
Yeah, and if you so you were talking about Bell. There was like a fender bender in that situation. Like a blue Jeep ran into their truck. Anyways, they sent that tactical squad over to the dude's house who had the fender bender with him, and they put a C4 charge up on his door, right? And they blew off his door, while on the other side, the dude wasn't even home. It was just his girlfriend and then her 6-year-old and 1-year-old child sleeping on the other side of the door, which they put the C4 charge on. And if you watch that video, like they just go in such a lazy stack, and all that is just total terrorism. There was no reason. They had no idea he was home, so they had no intelligence of any sort that said this warranted a breach by a C4 charge, right? So they did all of that just to spread terrorism, and that is scary to watch. Like it's very alarming to see. But just remember, like that is literally, they have like that one squad in LA, and I've seen like one other squad in Detroit, and that is what they're trying to do, is spread fear, because there are simply too many people to oppress physically. Like they do not have, they will never, they could give ICE $1 trillion, and they would literally need to hire half the population to oppress the other half of the population. Like those are like the numbers that you need, right? Like it's the only way that tyrannical governments ever successfully operate is through fear. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, China, people were very afraid because they had been conditioned for years and years and years and years and years to be afraid. And that is a silver lining. The American people have not had that same conditioning. And instead of being afraid, we're pissed off. And I think that's why today, now this is the time to stop it, because, this goes for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that conditioning sets in. And people now, instead of filming ICE, they downcast their eyes and they walk away, as that would happen in Russia, because now they're afraid, because they know the consequences of standing up now. And all of that is to say, what we can each do every day is to do our daily practices to combat that fear. And what I found for me, it really works for me, is I practice Vipassana meditation. So I've actually been now, I think, to 12 10-day silent meditation retreats where you sit in silence and you meditate from like 5 a.m. until 9 p.m. Total silence, 10 straight days. Amazing, like incredible, so beneficial for me. And that's my practice that I bring with all of this. Like I think I don't know that I would have my mental health. I might be losing it right now if I didn't have that practice. But you really need a practice, because me telling you don't be afraid, like that's useless platitudes. Like, okay, yeah, we all know don't be afraid, but like fear is there, right? So you need to develop that practice. And my recommendation is just Google Anapana meditation on YouTube. That's a great starting point. Is just focus on the breath and the breath coming in and out of your nose. And you can do that, and that'll start calming you. And then there's other techniques to start just grounding you in your body. Just start just feeling the sensations on your head, on the palms of your hands, on the soles of your feet, and just doing that for 5 minutes, grounding yourself can be incredibly powerful, because that's what overwhelms you, is that when you're not even aware of the fear in yourself that is overpowering you, right? Like without awareness of what is happening in our bodies, we cannot change. And so I think that's so important. And these are all, things that you can be doing to take control, because that's what is so terrifying about this. Because I was thinking the other day, it's like, this is so weird. Like the thought of me going to a conventional war doesn't give me the same anxiety as thinking about like what is happening in the US. And I was like, why is that? And I think it's because the unknown factor, like I don't know what this fascist dictatorship is going to look like as it plays out in the US, but I know what a conventional war looks like, as horrific as that is. Like I know what to expect, two sides, we got supply lines, all this stuff. And that's not as scary to me, but this unknown and this feeling like we could be out of control and lose our control, that is really scary. And so doing these practices to really, that is where you can start gaining your locus of control. And that's where you start gaining your power back, because truly they cannot take away your power unless you give it up to them. Like, I get so much peace, and I got to be careful what I say here, of like, I will not be taken to a camp. I will not allow myself, that worries me a lot, like to be like tortured to death in some horrific concentration camp. But it's like, you know what? I can choose not to. I can not comply. And that gives me peace to know, like, I have made that decision that will not be a possibility for me. And sometimes it is not good decision. It might be two terrible options, but we still have that choice in the end. And like on the video you were talking about, like, I grew up really super addicted to video games, right? And I was like so afraid of life, and like to the point where I couldn't even talk to someone checking out at the grocery store. And I'd be housebound for a week or two at a time. And I'm so full of fear. And then I started going out and doing these things and more. And now, I've hiked like 20,000 miles in the backcountry now, face just crazy weather, grizzly bears, all sorts of rattlesnakes, everything you can imagine. And that has taught me that like the fear that I felt back then when I was stuck housebound, addicted to games, was because I just hadn't placed myself in these situations yet. So I was like, oh my God, like I'm just this like super anxious, shy person that I don't have what it takes to do anything. But it was just, I hadn't asked, there was nothing being asked of me when I'm just sitting in my house all day looking at my computer. But when I put myself out there and I have to like hitchhike and, do all these other things, the strength comes up. And I think like, I really think that is a truth for all human beings. And the issue is most of us, our daily lives are so comfortable, we aren't asked to use that strength. And then we forget that we have that strength. And I really, that's my message to people. It's like, things are going to get tough, but human beings rise to the occasion. Like we are survivors. Like, I mean, look at what is happening to the people in Gaza, and they are still surviving. They're still pulling through. They're still resisting, like hell on earth, and they're still standing up. So,
I think like any sort of like political activism, resistance, it has to be cultivated by each individual, one step at a time. Like for a lot of people, for me, a long time ago, it was just showing up to the first protest. It was a stupid Libby liberal protest that accomplished absolutely nothing and was controlled opposition. But I showed up. I was like, that was easier than I thought. And then next, flash forward a few years, and where I'm trying to de-arrest people with the homies, getting pepper sprayed and shit. So
getting chased by DC police. They didn't catch up to
you. Dude, that was epic. That juke.
I pump faked that guy.
Little piggy couldn't run fast enough. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So basically, just start exercising those muscles. You can do it, and you don't have to do anything crazy. We always just need more bodies at a protest, because the more people there are, the safer we are. But I wanted to come back to one thing you said. the idea of a conventional war scares you less than the secret police force, a war against the secret police force. Okay. Here is kind of what I figured out. I grew up in a really chaotic environment. My mother was bipolar, had borderline personality disorder. So rules didn't really exist. There was no like consistency. There's no boundaries. So when I started doing combat operations in Afghanistan, I actually felt like at peace in a weird way for the first time, because I knew where everything stood. There was an enemy. There are my friends. I exist in this hierarchy. These are the rules. These are the job expectations. Everything's laid out for you. And that's the difference between like a conventional war and the fucking mind fuck that's happening right now, where the rules are changing, the goalposts are moving, everything's chaotic. There are people like Stephen Miller, which is Temu Joseph Goebbels, gets on Fox and just lies, straight up lies to the American people. This environment is the war at home is scarier in some ways, at least for me personally, than the thought of even going back and engaging in a conventional war.
Yeah. It's that unknown, right? It really is that unknown. And I think that is where our work is to become aware of how that is affecting us, and just, because that it can be, I think this idea to like, don't be afraid, that's a silly idea. If you suppress fear, it's going to come out in other ways, but you need to just be aware and take the practices, like, thinking through all of the different scenarios and deciding for yourself, what are my red lines? What are what am I not going to tolerate? Because I think that's where a lot of the fear is. It's like, they're going to do something so crazy and it's going to make your life intolerable. And, like they're going to drag you out to Alligator Auschwitz and, leave you to rot out there. But it's like, we still have agency. We still have decisions. They might not be great decisions, but we don't give up that agency. Don't give, that's what they want. They want you to give that up agency to them.
So let's
hold on. Let me, one second. So the reason why it's called Alligator Alcatraz, and the reason why they did it in this visual, visceral way, there's a reason why they're doing it the way they're doing it. They're doing this to instill fear. There's a reason why they're spreading rumors that they're dumping people out of cargo planes in the ocean. There's a reason why there's a splurge of this fear tactic. It's to put you in a paralysis. And like you said, you can't suppress fear. But what I would suggest is you use the fear to hone in and accentuate and accelerate your senses, your awareness, your sense of awareness. Fear and adrenaline can be directed to give you a sharp sense of awareness around you for the sake of the safety of people around you. That's what people in the military are trained to do. You're going to have adrenaline. It's a matter of not getting tunnel vision and focusing that adrenaline in the right direction. And you touched on something interesting about how people do rise to the occasion. Hollywood has played a huge role in brainwashing us in thinking that when disaster strikes, it's chaos and everybody's killing each other and robbing each other and murdering each other. This is absolutely false. This is not how things play out. If you study the disasters that have happened, like Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Katrina, and different disasters throughout history, the studies show that people actually come together closer than they ever did before. They become more efficient than they ever did before, and people get to know each other intimately. There is nothing that forces you to intimately know your neighbor than when shit goes down, like the power grid goes out, or there's disaster, because now you have no choice but to walk over to your next door neighbor, get to know them, and ask them what they need and tell them what you need. So this leads to like building local community. You guys need to start building local community. And we throw that word around a lot, building community. And I kind of hate how it's just kind of gotten watered down. And at some point, we need to start outlining what exactly that means. And it starts with just walking over to your neighbor's house and asking them what they need. And then going from there, starting a relationship, starting a communications line. And we're going to have to start talking eventually about setting up underground railroads and safe houses. Because I think the closest model that we have to what's going on that is the closest precedent is the French resistance and during the Nazi occupation, because France was a established first world country with modernity to it, right? We are in that kind of model. This isn't like full on guerrilla warfare, third world country type shit where we're getting sniped by, we're unarmed. We're in a somewhat civilized society with the luxuries of modern life. So we have to apply that model and adapt it from, like, say, the French Revolution, or not the French Revolution, the French Resistance, when we had to use the modern way of life and incorporating into resistance.
We could also do a French Revolution too. You know, we don't need to limit ourselves.
Okay, without the racism, though, without the racism.
Yeah, without the racism. No, yeah. And one thing I wanted to expand on, like what you and Jack were talking about, is not just fear that we have, but fear that these ICE officers, the police, and the ruling class, no, they've kind of studied how to do this. These moves being made by the billionaires like Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison, they're very studied, they're very intentional. And one thing has been a constant throughout history. In uprisings, there are never enough cops and there are never enough soldiers once they really get going. So this ties back into the surveillance state about why law enforcement officers get to wear masks, but we don't at protests. It's because Palantir, these integrated national databases that are going to be accessed by all three-letter agencies at the click of a button, they are force multipliers. They are meant to allocate police assets and law enforcement assets and predictive models in order to multiply the ground presence of police officers. And they're doing that because they know that there's not enough of them, and therefore they're scared too.
And I think that's why these next years are so critical, because I was like, why has the mask come off now? Why have they been pretending to care about citizens and pretending, that we have this democratic process up until the last couple of years? It just feels like everywhere around the world, the mask has just been fully ripped off. And I have several different theories, but I think one of them is that I think they think with AI, they have solved the manpower problem with AI and with killer drones. I mean, I have this morbid curiosity with Ukraine, watching the war in Ukraine. And then just like, it really clicked for me when in that same house raid in Huntington Park, where they put a charge on the door, you could hear a drone going off. And there was another house where they raided. There's another family with a 16 and 14-year-old kid in there, where they sent in a drone first. And I was like, holy shit. What they think is if things really kick off, they're going to have, because there are killer drones already in existence. It's not some sci-fi thing. Like now that's what a crazy force multiplier that would be, is, unleash 10,000 drones with explosive payloads on them, or, their little cube pellet guns.
Yep.
The
but they all have a weakness. Everything has a weakness. Everything has an Achilles heel. And like you said, I absolutely 100% agree. They have become overconfident in their technological capabilities, and I feel like they're playing their hand too quickly. I think that they're getting cocky. They feel like they're on a short timeline, so they're just rushing shit. And I think that will be their undoing, because mind you, that they fucked up when the right wing started to see, like, a lot of MAGA is becoming disillusioned right now, and they're joining I don't think that was meant to be. I think that this was supposed to be a slow boil of the frog, and I think that they're just playing their hand too quickly, especially with this overconfidence of technology.
You have to recognize that these same policymakers, both in the Democratic and Republican Party, I mean, they're not the ones really pulling the string, but they are crafting policy. These are the same guys who thought that we were actually going to defeat the Taliban.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there. And one more point, in order to give kind of structure and boundaries to what is an unconventional warfare, class warfare against the American people. Well, we know what their goals are. Okay. First of all, let's talk about some personalities who are crafting policies. Let's start with who I refer to as Temu Goebbels, Stephen Miller.
The only one who is
okay, so they open up with this horrendous clip from when he was in college, complaining about how he shouldn't have to pick up trash because janitors should do it.
Am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash? And we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it all.
That's young Stephen Miller, and he's always been an asshole. household. He's Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy and homeland security advisor. He's also known as Trump's brain. Leaked emails show he's a white nationalist, which isn't surprising given that he's behind immigration policies like family separation and a Muslim travel ban. His email showed that in 2015 and 16, he promoted white nationalist books, websites, and conspiracies to editors of Breitbart, a far-right news site. More than 80% of the 900 plus emails reviewed focused on race or immigration, often referring to the debunked conspiracy theory that non-white people are deliberately wiping white people off the planet. He referred to President Calvin Coolidge in his emails multiple times, backing his eugenics-based immigration policies once praised by Hitler. He was upset when some retailers stopped selling Confederate flags and symbols after the Charleston church shooting by white supremacist Dylan Roof, and encouraged Breitbart to create a counter-narrative. He often recommended articles from white nationalist websites like American Renaissance and Beat Air to highlight interracial crime. He pushed for coverage of The Camp of the Saints, a French novel loved by white supremacists for its racist depiction of non-white immigrants. He loves pushing false racist narratives so much that in 2017, as Trump's senior advisor, he reportedly blocked the release of a government study showing that refugees had a positive fiscal impact. But that's not all. He's friends with Richard Spencer, the most notorious white nationalist in the US. Spencer was a central figure to the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. This guy went to high school with Miller and had a lot to say.
Stephen Miller was never bullied in high school. Stephen Miller was the bully. He bullied the kids who are already marginalized by our society, and he continues to do that from the White House today.
Yeah. So basically, I'm just going to play one more Stephen Miller thing again, because I believe that this is an important personality to follow. Let me see. Sorry. Where was it? This one's bad. This is from an interview from yesterday on Fox News regarding the Alligator Auschwitz camp. Here he is defending basically white nationalism by saying it's a humanizing movement. This argument's crazy.
Dehumanizing is when American citizens are stripped of their rights and their liberties by the invasion of illegal aliens. What is dehumanizing is when Democrats let illegal alien rapists into the country to attack our children. That is dehumanizing. What reclaims our humanity is when we get these monsters off the street and we put them where they can't hurt anybody. And when they see the consequences for their conduct, they will begin and they will continue to self-deport and get back home to avoid what President Trump is going to deliver.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, in order to define the goals of the enemy, this is a completely all-white nation that's Christian fascist and that loves Trump and Peter Thiel.
And let's put his message in context with what the actual agenda is. They don't care about white people. So if you're white and you're thinking you have a stake in this game, understand that this is all just for corporate profits. It is not for your profits. So just because you're white and you think that you might be able to identify with what they're saying, and you think that you have some type of stake in the game, or you have something to benefit from this, don't fool yourself. This is an age-old tactic of getting the peasants to fight each other and see each other as the enemy, so that oligarchs can take over and take more of your property and power. And that's exactly what's happening. They are taking migrants who are getting paid low wages from small businesses, and they're transporting them to labor camps where they're getting paid $1 a day for big companies, not even for small businesses. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's almost like, guys, newsflash, it's almost like white supremacy is bad for 99.9% of white people. Holy shit.
So to on the Stephen Miller point, and to bring it back to the big beautiful, I can't say it, the big ridiculous bill.
You can't say it anymore because Chuck Schumer got it struck from the record. Thank you, Chuck.
That's right. That will be my comfort blanket as I lay dying in the concentration camp. But to bring it back to that, I was just so baffled by the bill, because even in the sense of enriching the richest people, like, there's so many different criticisms of billionaires and rich people, right? But they're not stupid and they're not illogical. I mean, okay, they're stupid, but they are, generally more intelligent, and they can follow logic, and they don't do, why would they implement policies that are going to burn society down around them? And that was my thought, just looking at this bill. Like, this is like a societal collapse bill. What happens when 17 million people lose their last lifeline, or several more million people lose the ability to eat? Those are the things that are keeping society from absolutely imploding. And that doesn't, there's a reason that they haven't done that before to enrich rich people more, because rich people realize society still needs to exist for me to enjoy my riches. And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense, except when you look at, the evil cabal around Trump, which is like the whites, or the white supremacists, the Stephen Millers, and then the techno-fascists. Both of them want a like drastic population reduction event. And this is where I get into, I sound like QAnon, these,
No.
but that's their stated thing.
Yeah, we literally talked about this last week on Colonial Outcasts. This is actually something that they believe in. Dark Enlightenment, Curtis Yarvin, like the thought leader behind like Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison and like Alex Karp, and all these guys want to live in their own like city states of techno-feudalism and arcologies and beef with other techno-feudal warlords. Like, this is actually what they want. They fucking say it. Did you see Peter Thiel's interview for the New York Times column? When asked, is like, do you want humanities to continue to exist?
He had like a 5-minute delay before he computed what to say.
I don't understand. Why can't you just lie? Like, why is he so bad at answering questions?
Why can't he be like a Democrat and just lie to our face?
Yeah, like, why is that so hard? But that's where they align. That's Stephen Miller wants 100 million people in the U.S. The techno-fascists want their little techno-feudal states. Both of those require massive amounts of people to die. And I was like, I think that's what this bill is. Even, if the talk is about enriching billionaires, I don't think he's even about that. I think it's about creating societal collapse to get to their population goals.
I mean, if this bill was an asteroid, we'd call it a planet killer. The consequences over even the next couple years are going to be stark, because it's going to start with the rural hospital system. Like, that's what's really going to be the first thing to die under this.
Not only that, but like, this is again another silver lining, is that in the big beautiful bill, 2 million acres of public land is slated to be sold to multinational corporations, just sold off. This is finally touching your rural, I would say, patriotic crowd, because patriots in that crowd exist hunters, right? Outdoorsmen like yourself, Jack, and like a lot of other people. Joe Rogan actually is now calling it out for what it is. He's setting the alarm bells for this public sale of land, because what that means is they're selling it as some type of benefit to the American public. Oh, there's going to be more housing. No, it's going to be sold. It's not going to be benefiting the American public. They're not going to make any money off of that. This is going to be foreign investors will be buying this land to bulldoze and mine. We're talking Saudi investors. We're talking investors from England, from the UK. So understand that this sale of land is going to be to other people, not the American public.
Right.
And luckily, that awareness is now infecting the right, which is the silver lining, because now it's bringing them on board. It's like, wait a minute. You're selling our shit, the stuff that we're going to be bringing our grandchildren in to explore the outdoors. So that's something to be aware of, and that's something that we can hone in on when we're reaching out to the right.
Can you tell me where you find these voices? Because I'm on Twitter and all the
Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Joe Rogan. Okay. He's an interesting character, because on paper he's actually a radical leftist. He is more left than even most leftists. Yes, he is. He's anti-imperialist. He's anti-war. He is a socialist. He believes in a universal health care. He believes in a universal
platforms income. Oligarchs.
Exactly. And that's where it gets complicated, because he also platforms right-wing
fascists.
He endorsed Trump. And I have a theory about that he had to. He was forced to, because I have a theory on that. Like I said, it's a controversial character, but on paper, he is a radical leftist when you really look at it. He in fact, even made a comment saying that, why is ICE arresting hardworking families because of a fucking imaginary line in the dirt? See, that's a very radical left thing to say. But like you said, he endorsed Trump, and I have a theory about that.
I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Joe.
But
Rogan.
The point is hone in on the points of this big, beautiful bitch bill that will affect the right that they might be interested in, because selling off public land, a full-on surveillance state, that is some shit that the right is not down with. At least your average working class right.
Yeah, no, and Mark, like because before all this, I was just a hiker, so everything I follow is hiking stuff, and all the hiking outdoor pages have been so silent on all of this. But then they spoke up, and I'm I give them credit. I am very happy that everyone spoke up, and all these different hunting pages and outdoors and through hiking pages talked about the outdoors, and that pressure killed it. Which I'm kind of the thought that like this is like a negotiation tactic. You ask for too much, then you give up, and what they really want is the ICE funding, right? That's what they really want. They want to cut the Medicaid. They want to cut the food stamps, create the societal class. And they want the funding of the ICE. So like that's what they really want. But
in the military.
Yeah, in the military, right. And one other point before I forget it. I was just at the memorial. So do you guys know when the last person to have been shot and killed trying to cross the Berlin Wall was? Like how many years ago? What do you think?
80s?
Yeah, it was 1989, 36 years ago. Like that's within my lifetime. Like it's mind blowing to think that there were people that were living such, horrific lives that they would risk being shot to death to cross this wall into freedom. And I went to that site yesterday, and he was shot twice in the chest trying to climb over the Berlin Wall in 1989. Last person to be shot crossing that wall. Meanwhile, in this bill, we have 46.5 billion going to build the southern wall, but that doesn't mean a static wall. That means surveillance drones with thermal and IR. That means ground seismic sensors. That means the infrastructure so that their armed goons can get to any part of the border at at a moment's notice. And I'm sure, give it a couple of years, they're gonna have autonomous turrets up there like they do in Palestine. I really, that worries me a lot how much money they're spending on this border wall. I think at some point, when a regime becomes tyrannical enough, they lock down their population.
Yeah, and we can draw some. Actually, while you were talking about the Berlin Wall, I was like, you know what, that might be us trying to cross into Canada or Mexico eventually, because when we talk about the collapse of the Soviet Union. A lot of people knew that the system was in collapse, in cascade failure for a while. And that's where the term hypernormalization comes from. It's a heady $10 word, but it captures this kind of weird, dire atmosphere of the U.S. in 2025. And it was first articulated by scholar Alexei Yurchak to describe the civilian experience in Soviet Russia during the collapse of the USSR, and it describes life in a society where two main things are happening. The first is people are seeing that the government systems and institutions are broken. In fact, we're just getting rid of most of them. And the second is that for reasons including the lack of effective leadership and an inability to imagine how to disrupt the status quo, people carry on with their lives as normal despite systemic dysfunction. Give or take a heavy load of fear, dread, denial, and disassociation. What you're feeling is a disconnect between seeing that systems are failing, that things aren't working, and yet the institutions and the people in power are just like ignoring it and pretending everything is going to go on the way it is. So I think that's a problem with a lot of like people on the traditional liberal political spectrum. Trump's bad, but we still have the Constitution and the amendments. They don't want to have fucking elections anymore. Steve Bannon says he's already working on a third term for Trump. And if he gets in for a third term, it's going to be a fourth term and the fifth term and a sixth term. As long as his body can survive on McDonald's cheeseburgers, that's how long it's going to last. So we're kind of in this hyper-normalization moment. Of course, it's a completely different economic system than Soviet Russia, so it's going to look differently. And also, personal philosophies, personalities come into play. But yeah, it's going to get worse before it gets worse. And one of the main assaults on the American people was, yes, you brought up the Medicaid. I just want to bring up the point that what they're doing is also weaponizing bureaucracy, which they say they want to stop doing, but their qualification now that you need to have work or be willing to work or able to work to receive Medicaid, that's what we call an administrative burden. So they're not like kicking people off it. They're just making it almost impossible to get it through bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that's not highlighted. Go ahead. Sorry, Jack.
Oh, yeah. I was listening to a podcast, and God, I forget, but I'm sure if you Google enough of these terms, you'll turn it up. But they had a pilot program for that, and the website where you go in to enter your work hours was only available from like 9 to 5. Like the website closed at night. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what they're trying to do with these, policies.
Right. And it's more the same. We know what the goal is. We know what the goal is and what they're going to do. Basically, if the Nazis did it, these guys are going to do it. And this brings me full circle to what I wanted to get into with this shit. Hang on, where is it? I had it in my show notes and now it's gone. 1933 Enabling Act. So the big beautiful bill, which Chuck Schumer saved us from having to call it the big beautiful bill. It reminds me of the 1933 Enabling Act. So I'm just going to bring this up real quick because I kind of wanted to end on this note. Because again, these dudes really admired 1930s fascism, and they're taking this shit straight out of the playbook. Here we go. 1933 Enabling Act, the law to remedy the distress of the people and the Reich, was passed on March 23rd, 1933, and it granted the German cabinet, primarily led by Adolf Hitler, the power to enact laws without the involvement of the Reichstag German parliament or the president. This effectively bypassed the checks and balances of the Weimar Constitution, marked a crucial step in the transition from a democratic republic to a dictatorship, and the act was presented as a way to address the distress, quote-unquote distress, facing the nation, but its real aim was to consolidate Nazi power, both the fusing of corporate and government power into what we would call fascism. It allowed the cabinet to issue laws, even those that contradicted the Constitution, without the need for parliamentary approval, and it effectively neutralized the Reichstag, which was, the parliament, allowing Nazis to implement their policies, including the persecution of political opponents and the eventual establishment of a totalitarian regime and prisons. Sounds kind of familiar. And the act was passed by a 2/3 majority in parliament, although it was achieved through intimidation, suppression of communist deputies, socialist deputies, and the exploitation of the Reichstag fire degree. And I guess the only people who voted against it were like controlled opposition, like Democratic Socialists, like Bernie Sanders and AOC. So expect more of this type of legislation to be coming down the pipe in conjunction with more of these concentration camps. Because what is that Pastor Niemöller was quoted? First, I came for the communists, but I didn't speak out. I wasn't a communist, then socialist, then trade unionists, then Jews. And eventually they came for me. And the guy who wrote that quote was a Christian fascist preacher. And he was in prison because he spoke out against the state control of the church system. So, we know where this is going, y'all. And in the meantime, definitely want to revile ICE as much as possible and spread awareness. And these things are preventable. Like, we know historically how these things go, but they can also be derailed as well.
Right. And that's what we need to start focusing on going forward on Colonial Outcasts, bro. And one thing I was going to ask Jack, now that I have him and he can't go anywhere yet. What I want to do is, if we could start rolling out more like strategy episodes where we can brainstorm and think tank how we can help Americans prepare for resistance in very effective ways, because I believe that the onus is on us as veterans, because we've been inside the systems, we know the tactics, to use that knowledge to prepare the public for meaningful resistance that actually has teeth, that actually works, instead of just saying, hey, get out and protest, hey, build a community. We need to be more specific, and we need to offer more of a roadmap. And like I announced in the video that I put out last night, I am working with the Black Panther Party. We're developing a plan that I proposed to the Central Committee to roll out a system, a roadmap for an actual revolution that everybody can be involved with, that even no matter what your ideology is, it's something that everybody can do. So it is very much an inclusive, universal thing that I believe that a lot of patriots will be on board with. So I would like to work with you on that, Jack. If you don't mind, I would like to do more episodes with you talking about strategy, because I've seen your videos. You are a tactician, you know, especially with your experience with the outdoors and getting into the gnarliness of survivalism, which I'm a big fan of too. I'm a survivalist. I'm a prepper, Second Amendment guy. I'm all that shit. And this is where I feel like this is our bread and butter. And I feel like we have not embraced that part.
Yeah.
Me and
You
Greg.
know what? Like, not a lot of other podcasts do this. I'm pretty sure I can't even think of one. So that'd be a cool thing to transition into. And if we're going to be associating with the Black Panther Party, shout out to the FBI case officer in the comments section. Feel free, don't miss the Black Panther episode, okay?
Don't
You're gonna
want
to see that.
You're gonna love it.
No, I think that's an incredible idea, and I would love to participate in that, because I've already written I wrote some like 30-page guide on how to prepare for martial law, just going through food, just all your basic survival things, because when shit hits the fan, you're gonna want a period of time where you don't have to leave the house for a while, right? And then just basic things like being able to stay warm at night when your power is out. And it's just, there's all these simple little things that you can prepare for ahead of time, and that gives you, again, more locus of control, more peace of mind. I wrote another very fictional document on how to resist, if Russia is in our streets and has occupied our cities.
Yes.
Russia.
Yeah, because it would definitely be Russia.
Yeah, Russia. And
Greenland.
like the SF handbook is on the internet. You can Google it, and it is right there. The entire handbook for unconventional warfare is on the internet. And then there's another
against Russia.
For fighting against Russia, exactly. Yeah. And there's another document where I wrote about that, Greg. I was like, this is what you would need to prepare for if you were trying to escape the wilderness into Canada. And it's like, unless you are extremely, extremely fit, you don't want to go through the mountains. That's going to be incredibly difficult, right? But it's going to be stuff like where you're gonna be moving 1 mile an hour, so you better pack 7 to 10 days of food, and like moving at night is going to be useless because they'll have thermals and whatever else. So just move during the day where you can see, and pick you're going to have to be strategic, because they're going to be watching every road that's within 5-10 miles of the border. And so there's like, these are the things that people are going to have to start thinking about, where like it is Handmaid's Tale come to life, where people are going to be escaping through the wilderness into Canada.
Bro, I know it's scary what Russia and Yemen are planning to do on home soil.
Oh yeah, right. It's crazy. It's not just The Handmaid. So we've unlocked so many new dystopias. We've got 1984 going on. We got Brave New World.
Squid Games.
Yeah, we got Squid Games. We got Judge Dredd. Now that they can deputize National Guardsmen as judges, like, bro, we got it all, man.
Yeah. I was thinking, I was like, this could have, like we could have had just competitive authoritarianism with like a benevolent dictator, but no, we had to get the worst white supremacists and the worst like techno-fascist geeks that want genocide and eugenics. Like not only did we lose democracy,
grade level.
Yeah, we got the worst of the authoritarians. Like what the hell?
I was expecting a James Bond villain. I thought Obama was going to be the guy. I thought it was going to be presentable, statesman-like. No, it had to be a doofus speaking in like fifth grade level.
Where's my cool cyberpunk like Shadowrun dystopia?
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, I think that's a good game plan going forward for future episodes. I definitely, other channels do like a lot of analysis and breaking news. I think Mark's idea about transitioning into something a little bit more that incorporates all the things at the same time is going to be actually more useful for the average viewer. So we're going to get there. And then, Jack, we're going to put your stuff in the description, but where can people find you?
Probably the best place is Instagram. That's at Quadzilla Hikes. And then also I write a lot on Substack. That's where the more in-depth guides on how to resist Russia in the streets is on my Substack. And that is also at Quadzilla Hikes.
Okay, cool. We'll link the stubs. We'll link the How to Fight Russians dirty commie bastards in to keep us off these good capitalist streets in the description. So, all right, guys. Well, it is Wednesday, and this is our wrap for the episode about ICE detentions, the martial law soft launch, and what you can do about it. Hey, instead of our weekly episode on Patreon on Fridays, Fuck Around Fridays, I want to do a 4th of July, an Anti-4th live stream. So might invite some people back on for that. What do you think about that, Mark?
No, it sounds great. Are you going to invite me?
Cool. Yeah. What? Yes. All right. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you. Well, I'll see you tomorrow on Mint Press News, but we'll see you Friday. Cheers, y'all, and stay frosty.